The grand hall was buzzing with excitement, the air filled with the soft murmur of conversations and the occasional clinking of glasses. People had gathered for a casual evening of music, but there was an unusual mix of anticipation and curiosity among the crowd. At the center of the hall stood a piano that gleamed under the warm lights, polished to perfection, its black and white keys reflecting the soft glow like tiny mirrors. Everyone seemed to sense that something special was about to happen, even if they didn't know what. Among the attendees, a woman quietly moved through the crowd. She was not dressed in the finest clothes, nor did she carry herself with the confidence of a performer. Her hands were slightly rough, hinting at years of work, and her eyes carried a calm, steady gaze that seemed to quietly observe everything around her. She was there simply because she loved music and had heard that a famous pianist would be performing that evening. She didn't belong to the glittering circles of high society that filled the hall, but she had a warmth about her that drew gentle smiles from a few who noticed her presence. The pianist had just arrived. He was known far and wide, not just for his mastery of the instrument, but also for his sharp humor and flamboyant personality. As he moved toward the piano, there was a sense of confidence in his step, an almost playful arrogance that made the audience chuckle quietly. He had a habit of engaging with the crowd, teasing them, making them feel part of his show, and tonight was no different. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the faces, and he paused briefly when he noticed the woman standing quietly by the edge of the hall. He smiled, a hint of mischief in his expression. Without much thought, almost as a joke, he gestured toward her and called out, "Would anyone here like to try playing a piece on this piano? Even something simple, I won't bite." His voice carried across the hall, warm but teasing, drawing laughter from the crowd. Some people looked at the woman, expecting her to shake her head nervously, and some whispered among themselves about how amusing it would be if she actually tried. The woman looked at the pianist, her calm expression unchanged. She felt no fear, no hesitation. Music had always been a part of her life, though she had never performed in front of large crowds. She loved the piano, loved the way it could carry emotions from the fingertips into the air, and she felt a quiet confidence that she could respond. Without a word, she stepped forward, her movements unhurried, almost as if she were approaching an old friend. The hall fell into a softer murmur as people turned to watch. Some faces were puzzled, others amused, but there was an unmistakable curiosity. The pianist raised an eyebrow, clearly entertained by the unexpected courage. He laughed softly and said, "Well, then, let's see what you've got." He motioned toward the piano, and she moved closer. As she approached, some people whispered, "She won't last more than a few notes," and some quietly hoped she might surprise them. There was a strange mix of doubt and anticipation in the air, a tension that made the room hold its collective breath. The woman's hands hovered above the keys, her fingers poised naturally, not stiff, not forced. She seemed to be listening to the silence around her, taking in the faint hum of the audience, the shine of the polished piano, the soft echo of footsteps on the wooden floor. She was calm, grounded, and completely in the moment. The pianist watched her closely, a small smirk still playing on his lips, not quite expecting anything remarkable. A few seconds passed, and then she pressed a key. The sound of the note was clear and steady, filling the space softly, but with intent. She didn't rush, she didn't fumble. She simply began to play, and it was evident immediately that there was a natural connection between her and the piano. The crowd quieted, leaning in, as if the first note had created a subtle spell over them. The pianist's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise passing through his confident demeanor. He had expected a clumsy attempt, maybe a few wrong notes, but this was something different. Even the people who had been laughing moments ago now leaned forward in their seats, watching closely. The woman's hands moved with a quiet elegance over the keys, gentle yet precise. There was no grand display, no exaggerated performance, just the simplicity of someone who knew and loved the music. Every note she played seemed to carry a piece of her soul, and the hall seemed to hold its breath, captivated by the unexpected beauty that was unfolding. The pianist, who had challenged her almost as a joke, now felt a surge of respect mixed with curiosity. He had always believed that talent was flashy, noticeable, and often displayed in dramatic ways. But this quiet woman was proving otherwise. There was a depth in her playing, a subtle emotion that reached beyond technical skill. He leaned slightly closer, watching her fingers move, each key touched with care and understanding, each note resonating with clarity and purpose. Some people in the audience shifted in their seats, unable to believe what they were hearing. Whispers spread through the hall, a mix of astonishment and admiration. "She's amazing," someone breathed. Another voice added, "I didn't expect that at all." Even those who had come expecting to be entertained by the famous pianist were now completely absorbed in the simple woman's performance. Her calm demeanor, her unassuming presence, and her natural talent were creating a moment that no one could have anticipated. The pianist, for the first time that evening, was genuinely intrigued. The playful arrogance that had filled his steps moments before softened into quiet attention. He watched as the woman continued, each note carefully chosen, flowing smoothly into the next. There was a rhythm, a story in her playing, a gentle but powerful expression that captivated everyone in the room. He realized that his initial assumptions were completely wrong. Talent didn't always announce itself with flashy moves or dramatic gestures. Sometimes, it arrived quietly, unexpectedly, and completely disarmed anyone who doubted it. As the woman played, there was a sense of shared wonder in the room. People stopped talking, even the murmurs died down. Eyes focused on her hands, the slight tilt of her head as she followed the melody in her mind, the serene look on her face that spoke of someone completely absorbed in the music. It was not a performance for attention, but a performance that came from a place of love and understanding. And that was far more powerful. Even the pianist, who had been known for his quick judgments and playful teasing, found himself silently applauding her in his mind. The room, filled with people who had come to witness a show, was now witnessing a rare moment of genuine talent and grace. The woman, simple in appearance but extraordinary in skill, had captured the hearts of everyone present. The evening, which had begun with laughter and casual entertainment, was now unfolding into something memorable, a story that would be retold long after the final note faded. And so, in that grand hall, amidst the polished piano, the soft lights, and the audience's hushed amazement, a simple woman began to show the world that true talent is never measured by appearances or expectations. Her hands danced across the keys, each note a small revelation, each pause a breath of sincerity. The famous pianist, who had challenged her as a joke, now watched with a quiet admiration he had never expected to feel that evening, and the audience, drawn in by the unexpected, knew that they were witnessing something extraordinary, something that went far beyond a simple performance. The moment she accepted the playful challenge, a subtle change swept across the hall. The air, which had been light and filled with laughter, now held a mix of curiosity and suspense. People turned in their seats to get a better view, leaning forward as if the woman's calm determination could somehow be felt from a distance. Conversations faded into whispers, and all eyes shifted toward the quiet figure moving toward the piano. There was a faint rustle as she stepped carefully, yet with purpose, her movements unhurried and natural. She didn't hurry, and there was a quiet dignity in the way she carried herself. This was not someone seeking applause. This was someone who had come to play, to connect with the music. The pianist, still standing beside the grand instrument, crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. He smiled, but the playful twinkle in his eye now carried a hint of genuine curiosity. He had expected a nervous stumble, perhaps a few awkward notes, maybe even a laughable pause. He had not expected the poise and calm she radiated. The audience had initially seen the interaction as a joke, a small entertainment between a famous musician and a humble attendee. But that mood was beginning to shift. Something about the woman's quiet focus made people sit up straighter. Their interest piqued. She stopped in front of the piano and let her gaze wander over the keys. They were familiar, yet every time she approached them, it felt like a conversation she had to listen to before speaking. Her hands hovered for a moment above the keys, almost as if she were feeling the air itself, listening to the subtle resonance that existed even in silence. The audience watched, some holding their breath, as if acknowledging the sacredness of this quiet pause. Even the pianist was silent now, letting the moment stretch without breaking it with his usual jokes. Slowly, she placed her fingers on the keys. The movement was deliberate, careful, yet entirely natural. She didn't stiffen or hold back, and there was no hint of hesitation. It was clear she had played countless times, that her hands remembered the music long before her mind did. She looked up briefly at the audience, offering a small, modest nod, a gesture that seemed to say she didn't need to perform for them, but simply wished to share what she loved. There was no arrogance, no need for applause. She was here to let the music speak. The pianist leaned slightly toward her, his curiosity now fully awakened. He was used to commanding the room, to being the center of attention. But tonight he was witnessing something unexpected. There was no grand introduction, No dramatic flourish, just a simple woman stepping forward, her eyes calm, her posture relaxed, and her hands ready to create something extraordinary. The audience began to sense that this was not going to be ordinary, that the playful challenge had turned into something far more compelling. As her fingers pressed down, the first note resonated gently through the hall. It was clear, confident, and full of intention. The sound seemed to stretch in the air, filling the space without being forced, reaching every corner of the room. The audience was silent now, leaning in to catch every vibration. People who had been ready to laugh at the challenge now found themselves caught in a quiet awe. Each note seemed deliberate, yet effortless, carrying with it a sense of understanding and emotion that transcended technical skill. There was an unmistakable depth to her playing, a sense that she was telling a story that had lived inside her for a long time. The pianist's playful smirk had vanished. He stood there, watching intently, trying to anticipate what she might do next. But it was impossible. Her style was her own, unstudied in the ways that mattered to him, yet rich with authenticity. The audience, too, felt the shift. The laughter and lightheartedness of moments ago had been replaced by a collective attention that bordered on reverence. No one moved, no one whispered. Not even the soft shuffle of feet or the clinking of glasses broke the focus. It was as if the room itself had paused to listen, to witness the unfolding of something genuine. Some of the people who had initially doubted her skill now exchanged glances, their expressions a mixture of surprise and admiration. They had expected a display meant to entertain, but instead they were watching someone who was fully in her element. She didn't play to impress, she didn't play to challenge the pianist or the audience. She simply played because the music called to her, because it was something she understood deeply. That authenticity was what captivated everyone in the room. The pianist, who had built his career on precision and dramatic flair, was now thinking differently. He had seen countless performers, all skilled and polished, yet none had captured this subtle balance of technique and heartfelt expression. He felt a flicker of humility, a recognition that true artistry could exist in unexpected places, in people who carried it quietly, without seeking notice. He could sense the emotional thread running through her fingers, a delicate interplay of restraint and intensity that made the music feel alive. The woman's focus never wavered. She was aware of the audience and the pianist, yet she did not let that awareness disturb her concentration. Her hands moved with a natural rhythm, flowing across the keys as if they were extensions of her own thoughts. The melody rose and fell gracefully, never forced, never rushed, yet filled with a subtle power that held the room's attention. Each note seemed to echo in the hearts of those listening, carrying with it a story that they had not expected but were grateful to hear. The audience could feel the change in the atmosphere. What had begun as a lighthearted challenge was evolving into a moment of connection, where music bridged the gap between performer and listener. People who had come casually, some expecting only entertainment, now sat absorbed, sensing that they were witnessing a rare encounter with genuine talent. Their eyes followed her hands, their ears attuned to every note, their hearts open to the quiet, unfolding magic. Even the pianist, experienced and confident as he was, found himself reassessing his assumptions. He had thought talent always announced itself with brilliance and spectacle, but she demonstrated that depth and beauty could also be quiet, unobtrusive, and profoundly moving. His previous amusement transformed into genuine appreciation. He could see her skill, her understanding, and the emotion she poured into every movement. It was a revelation that made him pause and reflect on his own preconceptions. As she continued, a soft, almost imperceptible smile appeared on her face. She was not aware of the effect she had on the crowd, nor did she seek to impress anyone. She was present in the music, letting it flow through her fingers and into the hall. The pianist watched, now fully attentive, noticing the subtle variations in her tempo, the gentle emphasis on certain notes, and the natural phrasing that gave the music life. It was clear that her connection to the piano was personal and profound, a conversation that required no words. The audience's initial laughter and skepticism had been replaced entirely by admiration and fascination. Some sat in wide-eyed silence, others leaned forward with their hands clasped, as if holding their breath to avoid disturbing the moment. The performance had become more than a challenge. It was an unexpected gift, a demonstration of how talent could emerge from the most unassuming places. The hall seemed to hold its collective heartbeat, caught in the rhythm of her playing. As she reached a pause in the music, a soft sigh could be heard, not from the audience, but almost from the hall itself, as if it had been waiting for this expression of art. The pianist, for a moment, felt a mix of relief and amazement. He had challenged her as a joke, expecting a brief and perhaps comical display. But what he witnessed was a testament to the quiet power of dedication, passion, and innate talent. He realized that judging someone by appearances or assumptions was a mistake, and that real skill could sometimes be hidden behind modesty and simplicity. The woman's performance, calm and precise, had begun to shift the entire energy in the room. People who had been distracted, fidgeting, or whispering, now sat fully present, completely engaged. There was a sense of shared experience, of witnessing something rare and beautiful, a quiet moment that would linger in their memories long after the evening ended. The pianist himself felt a change within, a reminder that art was not about ego or spectacle, but about connection, authenticity, and emotion. And so, in that hall, with the grand piano at the center and the audience holding its collective breath, the woman continued to play, fully absorbed in the music. The room, the people, and even the famous pianist seemed to understand, if only subconsciously, that they were experiencing something unexpected and extraordinary. It was no longer just a playful challenge. It had become a revelation, a reminder of how quiet strength and true talent could astonish and inspire everyone who took the time to notice. The moment her fingers began to move across the keys, it became clear to everyone in the hall that this was no ordinary performance. Each note carried with it a depth of feeling that seemed almost impossible to express in words. The pianist, standing beside her, felt a stirring of genuine surprise. He had expected a brief, awkward attempt, maybe a few clumsy notes, and perhaps a laugh from the audience. Instead, he was witnessing a mastery that seemed both natural and extraordinary. The woman's playing was precise, yet fluid, disciplined yet free, and every movement of her hands spoke of countless hours spent listening, learning, and feeling the music deeply within herself. The audience had fallen completely silent. The laughter and whispers that had filled the room before were gone, replaced by an almost sacred stillness. People leaned forward in their seats, some holding their breath, as if even the softest movement might disturb the unfolding magic. Eyes followed her hands as they glided over the keys, fingers moving with ease and confidence, producing a sound that was both delicate and powerful. The melody rose and fell, each note weaving a story that transcended words, a tale of emotion and connection that no one had expected. The pianist, experienced and confident as he was, found himself caught off guard. He had performed in front of thousands, seen countless audiences, and witnessed innumerable talented musicians, yet this was different. There was an authenticity in her playing, a depth of understanding that came from somewhere far beyond technique or training. It was as if the piano and the woman had become one, communicating silently, perfectly, effortlessly. Her fingers danced across the keys with grace, never hurried, never strained, letting the music unfold naturally, and it filled the hall with a sense of wonder. Some members of the audience shifted in their seats, exchanging glances of astonishment. People who had been ready to laugh or turn away now sat captivated, unable to tear their eyes from her hands. Every note she played seemed to touch something deep inside them, evoking memories, feelings, and emotions they hadn't anticipated. The woman's calm expression, her focus, and her effortless technique created a harmony that drew everyone in, making them feel as if they were part of the music itself. The pianist's smirk had vanished entirely. He now watched with intense attention, trying to anticipate her next movement. But it was impossible. The music was alive, flowing from her hands with a natural rhythm that could not be predicted or controlled. He felt a stirring of humility, a recognition that true talent was not always flashy or attention-seeking. It could be quiet, understated, yet still powerful enough to move a room of people who thought they had seen it all. He realized he had underestimated her, and that realization brought a mixture of respect and awe. The woman played with a quiet confidence that was infectious. Her hands moved with ease, each note deliberate, carrying emotion and intent. There was no need for grand gestures or dramatic flourishes. The beauty of her performance came from the purity of her connection to the music. She listened to the sound, adjusted her touch with intuition, and allowed the melody to breathe. It was evident that she was not performing to impress anyone, not the audience, not the pianist. She played because it was who she was, because the music was a part of her very being, and the audience could feel it. The atmosphere in the hall shifted further. What had started as a casual evening of entertainment had transformed into something far more profound. People who had been distracted, talking, or checking their watches were now fully absorbed. The collective focus was intense, almost palpable, as if everyone had been transported to a different world by the music. Some closed their eyes, letting the sound wash over them, while others sat in awe, unable to believe what they were witnessing. The energy in the room was quiet, but electric, a shared experience of something rare and beautiful. The pianist, unable to contain his admiration, moved closer to the piano. He watched her hands, noting the subtle shifts in pressure, the delicate changes in tempo, the nuanced phrasing that gave the music life. Every note she played seemed to be intentional yet effortless, controlled yet free. He realized that she was not just technically skilled, she was emotionally present, fully immersed in the music, and that presence made her performance extraordinary. It was not just a demonstration of skill, it was a conversation, an intimate expression that reached everyone in the room. As she continued, the woman's confidence never wavered. She was aware of the audience, aware of the pianist, yet she did not let that awareness affect her. Her focus remained on the music, on the feel of the keys beneath her fingers, and the story she wanted to tell. Each note flowed naturally into the next, creating a seamless melody that was both intricate and moving. The hall seemed to vibrate with the sound, each corner filled with the resonance of her playing. People listened in silence, some with tears in their eyes, others with wide-eyed astonishment, all captivated by the beauty and honesty of her performance. The pianist felt a mixture of emotions as he listened. He was impressed, humbled, and deeply moved. He had always known the power of music, but he had never seen it expressed with such quiet mastery and authenticity. He realized that his playful challenge had inadvertently revealed something extraordinary. The woman, whom he had expected to fumble or fail, was teaching everyone present a lesson about talent, dedication, and the unexpected places where brilliance could emerge. He watched her with a newfound respect, understanding that this moment was not just about performance. It was about truth, expression, and connection. The audience's reaction continued to evolve. What had started as curiosity turned into admiration, then into something deeper, an emotional connection to the music and to the performer. People who had come for light entertainment were now witnessing a moment of genuine artistry. Some whispered to one another in awe, while others simply sat in silence, letting the music speak to them. The room felt alive with shared emotion, a collective recognition of something rare and precious. The woman's playing was no longer just a personal expression. It had become a gift to everyone present. As the performance progressed, the woman's expression remained serene. She smiled faintly, not for the audience, but for herself, as if she were enjoying a private conversation with the music. Her hands moved effortlessly, never faltering, never showing hesitation. The melody built and receded, gentle waves of sound that carried emotion, nuance, and subtle power. Every note seemed to tell a story, not a story that required words, but one that could be felt deeply by anyone willing to listen. The pianist, still standing beside her, was captivated. He had seen countless musicians in his life, but this performance was something beyond comparison. The audience, completely absorbed, seemed to forget everything else. The room was no longer just a hall. It was a space where music lived and breathed. People leaned forward, some with eyes closed, others staring at her hands, all united by the shared experience. There was no need for applause yet. The music itself held them in a spell woven by the quiet, confident skill of a woman who had been underestimated, yet who now held the room in her hands. The pianist felt a deep sense of respect and humility. He had challenged her lightly, expecting a brief moment of amusement, and now he understood that true talent could never be measured by appearances or assumptions. He realized that the most profound artistry often came from those who did not seek recognition, who played for the love of the music itself. He listened intently, letting the performance wash over him, recognizing that this moment was rare and precious, something to be remembered, cherished, and learned from. As she reached the culmination of her piece, the music swelled with emotion, each note carefully chosen and executed with precision. The hall was filled with sound, resonant and pure, carrying the energy, skill, and passion of the performer. The pianist, the audience, and the entire space seemed to exist only in that moment, fully present and deeply moved. There was a sense of wonder, a shared acknowledgement of the unexpected beauty that had emerged from someone who had initially seemed simple and unassuming. Finally, the last note lingered in the air, soft and fading, leaving a quiet stillness in its wake. The hall remained silent for a moment, as if no one could quite believe what had just occurred. Then, slowly, a ripple of applause began, growing louder and louder, filling the room with appreciation and awe. The pianist, his eyes still wide with admiration, stepped forward to acknowledge the woman, a smile of genuine respect on his face. The audience erupted into cheers, but there was no exaggeration, no forced drama. It was an honest response to something real, something beautiful, an unforgettable. In that moment, the woman stood quietly, humble and calm, letting the applause wash over her. She did not seek it, did not crave it, but she accepted it with grace, knowing that the music itself had spoken more than words ever could. The pianist, who had thought the evening would be light and entertaining, now found himself changed by the experience. He had been challenged in a way he had not expected, not by a competitor, but by someone who had reminded him of the true power and beauty of music. The applause continued to echo through the hall long after the last note had faded. Some people were on their feet, clapping with unrestrained admiration, while others remained seated, their hands pressed together, still absorbing the emotional impact of what they had just witnessed. There was a shared sense among everyone present that they had experienced something rare and extraordinary. The woman, calm and composed, allowed herself a small smile, one that spoke of quiet satisfaction rather than pride. She had played not for recognition, but because music had always been a part of her, and in that moment, it had found its fullest expression. The pianist, standing beside her, was a picture of astonishment and respect. He had seen countless performances, yet none had touched him in the way this one had. He moved closer, almost instinctively, as if he wanted to understand the depth of her skill more clearly. His eyes, wide with admiration, followed the gentle movements of her fingers as they lingered above the keys, still vibrating faintly from the music. There was no doubt in his mind now. He had underestimated her, and the humility that followed this realization was profound. Audience members were whispering to each other, their voices filled with wonder and amazement. Some spoke of how unexpected it was that someone so unassuming could play with such mastery. Others commented on the emotion that seemed to flow naturally from her fingertips, reaching out to everyone in the room. Even those who had initially doubted her found themselves unable to contain their respect. It was clear that her performance had broken through expectations, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. The pianist, known for his humor and sometimes playful arrogance, felt an unfamiliar sense of humility. He realized that talent did not always announce itself with flashy movements or dramatic flair. Here was someone who carried her ability quietly, without seeking attention, yet capable of producing a performance that could move an entire hall. He nodded slowly, acknowledging not just her skill, but the courage it took to step forward and play without fear, without pretense. People in the audience began to share their own reactions more openly. Some were marveling at the delicate control in her touch, the way each note carried both strength and subtlety. Others were fascinated by the way she seemed to feel every sound, responding instinctively to the energy of the room. There was an almost palpable connection forming between the woman, the music, and the audience. It was a shared moment of understanding, a collective recognition of beauty and talent that transcended words. The woman herself remained quiet, almost reflective, as if she were savoring the resonance of the music in the room. She did not seek accolades, but she accepted the warmth of the audience's appreciation with gentle gratitude. Her hands rested lightly on the keys, and for a brief moment, the room seemed to breathe with her, sharing in the quiet power of her presence. There was a serenity about her that made the audience feel as though they were witnessing, not just a performance, but a gift, a rare glimpse into the soul of someone who truly understood music. The pianist took a deep breath, still absorbing the moment. He had challenged her as a joke, never imagining the outcome would be this profound. Now, he felt compelled to acknowledge her in front of the audience, to recognize not just her skill, but the honesty and heart she had brought to the piano. He stepped closer, his voice steady, carrying over the remnants of applause, and spoke words that were simple yet sincere. "I have to admit," he said, "I expected this to be a light-hearted moment, but what you have just shown us is nothing short of extraordinary. Your talent, your passion, and your connection to the music are remarkable. Thank you for sharing it with us." The audience responded with renewed applause, some standing this time, their admiration unmistakable. The woman offered a modest nod in response, her expression calm and composed. She did not bask in the praise. Instead, she seemed to direct her gratitude toward the music itself, recognizing that it had allowed her to connect with everyone in the room in a way that words could never achieve. The pianist, witnessing her humility and grace, felt a profound respect for her not only as a musician, but as a person. As the applause subsided, conversations began to stir once more. People discussed the unexpected skill of the woman, the emotional depth of her playing, and the way she had transformed a simple moment into something unforgettable. The hall was alive with reflections and admiration. each person processing the experience in their own way. The atmosphere was no longer casual. It had been elevated, touched by a sense of awe and wonder that lingered long after the final note. Some members of the audience approached her quietly, expressing their admiration in soft voices, careful not to disturb the moment. Others simply observed from a distance, their eyes filled with respect and appreciation. It was clear that the woman had touched each person in a unique way, her performance leaving an imprint on the hearts of everyone present. She listened politely, offering gentle smiles and brief words of thanks, never seeking to dominate the conversation or draw attention to herself. The pianist, still standing beside her, felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had been reminded that true artistry was not about showmanship, fame, or recognition. It was about connection, authenticity, and the courage to share one's inner world through music. He realized that his playful challenge had led to an extraordinary moment, one that would remain with him and the audience for years to come. He felt a quiet admiration for the woman, who had demonstrated that talent, when combined with dedication and humility, could move even the most experienced and confident observers. The audience began to settle, the initial excitement giving way to a thoughtful silence. People were reflecting on the performance, replaying the notes in their minds, and appreciating the depth of feeling that had been conveyed. The hall, once filled with laughter and casual chatter, now carried a sense of reverence, a recognition of the rare talent that had stood before them. The woman, still at the piano, seemed to share in this reflection, her posture relaxed, her hands resting lightly on the keys as she took in the energy of the room. The pianist finally spoke again, this time addressing the audience more broadly. He acknowledged the power of unexpected talent, and reminded everyone that assumptions based on appearances could be misleading. He praised the courage it took for someone to step forward, to share their gift without expectation, and to touch the hearts of those listening. The audience listened intently, nodding in agreement, their admiration for the woman deepening with every word. People began to approach the piano more openly, some asking questions about her experience, her practice, and how she had developed such remarkable skill. She answered with simplicity and honesty, never boasting, never exaggerating. Her words reflected her love for music, her dedication to learning, and her belief that anyone who truly connected with an instrument could create something beautiful. The audience listened, inspired not only by her performance, but by her humility, patience, and sincerity. As the evening continued, the energy in the hall remained elevated. People discussed the performance with excitement and admiration, recounting the moments that had touched them most. The pianist, now fully engaged in conversation with the woman, shared his own reflections and asked her about her approach to music. There was a mutual respect, a recognition of skill and understanding that transcended differences in experience or reputation. The hall was filled with a sense of community, a shared appreciation for the beauty that could emerge when talent and passion were combined with humility. The woman, though still quiet and composed, seemed to glow with a sense of fulfillment. She had not sought the spotlight, but she had allowed herself to share her gift, and the response had been overwhelmingly positive. The pianist, witnessing this, felt a renewed inspiration for his own work. He realized that moments like this, when someone unexpected could astonish and inspire, were the true magic of music. He felt grateful for having been part of this experience, and he knew that the audience would carry the memory of this evening with them for a long time. In the midst of the applause and conversation, the woman allowed herself a brief, private smile. She had stepped forward when challenged, not out of bravado or desire for recognition, but because she loved music and wanted to connect. In doing so, she had transformed a casual event into a remarkable shared experience. The pianist, the audience, and even the hall itself seemed to recognize the significance of what had occurred. It was a reminder that true talent, combined with dedication, humility, and courage, could astonish and inspire everyone who took the time to notice. The hall had gradually settled into a soft, reflective quiet. The excitement of applause had faded into a gentle murmur of awe as people processed what had just happened. The woman remained at the piano, her hands lightly resting on the keys as if savoring the connection that had been formed between herself, the instrument, and the audience. There was a calm glow round her, an aura of quiet satisfaction and humility. She had not sought recognition, yet her performance had touched every person in the room, leaving an impression that went far beyond a simple evening of music. The pianist, standing nearby, looked at her with deep respect. He had spent years perfecting his craft, performing on stages around the world. Yet tonight he had witnessed something that transcended technical skill, It was the depth of feeling, the honesty of expression, and the courage to step forward that had made the moment unforgettable. He felt a profound gratitude, not just for the performance itself, but for the reminder of why music mattered at its core. It was not about applause or fame. It was about connection, emotion, and the courage to share one's gift without expectation. Audience members began to approach, some hesitantly, some with eyes wide in admiration. They wanted to express their appreciation, to tell her how much the music had meant to them. She responded with gentle smiles and simple words of thanks, her demeanor calm and unassuming. Each interaction was brief, yet each carried a warmth that made the listeners feel that their gratitude was truly acknowledged. She did not linger on praise or seek to dominate attention. She simply allowed the shared experience to exist naturally. The pianist finally stepped forward, addressing the audience and the woman together. His voice was steady, but carried a warmth that reflected his genuine admiration. "Tonight, we have witnessed something extraordinary," he said. "We have seen that true talent does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it appears quietly, humbly, yet with a force that touches everyone around it. Thank you for reminding us of the power of music and of courage, for showing us that skill, passion, and humility can create moments we will never forget." The audience erupted into applause once more, not just for the performance, but for the meaning and impact it carried. The woman nodded modestly, acknowledging the words without needing to respond further. She had never intended to impress or compete. She had simply played from her heart. Yet in doing so, she had offered something invaluable to everyone present, a reminder that true artistry is not measured by appearances, accolades, or expectation, but by sincerity, dedication, and the ability to touch others through one's expression. The audience seemed to recognize this, their faces reflecting both admiration and introspection. As the crowd continued to express their appreciation, the hall took on a sense of shared reflection. People quietly discussed their impressions, recounting the nuances of the performance that had moved them most. Some spoke of the delicate control in her hands, the precision with which each note was delivered, and the emotional depth that resonated with them personally. Others spoke of her humility, her calm presence, and the unexpected power of her playing. The room felt united, bonded by the extraordinary experience they had collectively witnessed. The pianist, watching all of this, felt a renewed inspiration for his own work. He reflected on the assumptions he had made at the beginning of the evening, the playful challenge he had issued, and how those assumptions had been completely upended. The woman had taught a lesson not just in music, but in humanity, humility, and the unexpected ways talent can manifest. He realized that the most profound moments often come from the least expected places, and that the true beauty of art lies in its ability to surprise, inspire, and move people in ways they never anticipated. The woman, aware of the attention yet unaffected by it, allowed herself to take in the warmth and respect surrounding her. She had always loved music for its own sake, for the way it could convey emotion without words, for the way it could create connection between people. Tonight had offered her an opportunity to share that love with others, and in doing so, she had created an impact far greater than she had imagined. There was a quiet joy in knowing that her simple act of playing the piano had touched hearts, inspired admiration, and reminded others of the beauty that exists in humility and authenticity. People continued to gather round, expressing admiration in soft voices, asking questions about her experience and background. She answered with simplicity and honesty, explaining that her connection to music had always been personal, that she had practiced and learned not for recognition, but for the sheer joy of expressing what she felt. Her words, like her performance, resonated with sincerity and warmth, reinforcing the impact she had made on the audience. People listened, inspired not only by her skill, but by the authenticity and humility that framed it. The pianist, moved by both the performance and the woman's demeanor, engaged in a conversation with her, seeking to understand her approach and perspective. He asked about her practice, her love for music, and the experiences that had shaped her talent. She responded openly, speaking of dedication, patience, and the quiet hours of learning and playing that had prepared her for moments like this. The exchange was rich with mutual respect, highlighting the difference between technical mastery and the deeper, personal connection to art that leaves a lasting impression. The audience, sensing the significance of this interaction, observed respectfully, many reflecting on their own experiences with music, talent, and opportunity. The evening had transformed from a simple casual gathering into a lesson in humility, passion, and the unexpected power of true skill. People left the hall feeling inspired, carrying with them not just the memory of the music, but the reminder that greatness often comes quietly, without fanfare, and can touch hearts in ways that spectacle cannot. The woman eventually stepped away from the piano, allowing others to approach and admire the instrument. She moved with grace, unaffected by the attention, her focus now on observing the reactions of the people around her. It was evident that her satisfaction came not from personal recognition, but from the shared experience and the understanding that music had a unique way of connecting people. The pianist followed her lead, walking through the hall, engaging with the audience, reflecting on the profound impact of the evening. As the evening wound down, the hall felt filled with a sense of quiet fulfillment. People lingered, exchanging thoughts and reflections, each person processing the experience in their own way. The woman, standing modestly to the side, observed with calm satisfaction, knowing that her music had created a lasting impression. The pianist, deeply moved, spoke quietly to her once more, expressing his admiration and gratitude for the lesson she had unwittingly shared. Their interaction, simple and genuine, underscored the evening's message. Talent combined with authenticity and courage can astonish, inspire, and transform expectations. Finally, as the crowd began to disperse, the energy in the hall remained vibrant, but softened into reflective warmth. People carried the memory of the performance with them, recounting the beauty, skill, and humility they had witnessed. The pianist lingered for a moment, looking back at the piano and the woman, understanding that the night had become more than a casual event. It had become a story of inspiration, a reminder that greatness often emerges quietly, and that true artistry touches not just the ears, but the hearts of all who listen. The woman, now leaving the stage area, moved with quiet grace, acknowledging smiles and nods from the audience. She did not seek attention, but she had created a moment that would remain in the minds and hearts of everyone present. The pianist watched her, a renewed sense of humility and understanding filling him. He knew that he had been given a rare experience, one that reminded him of the true power of music, the unexpected ways talent can emerge, and the profound impact of courage, authenticity, and quiet dedication. As the doors of the hall closed and the last echoes of conversation faded, the story of the evening settled into memory. Everyone who had been present carried with them the experience of witnessing something extraordinary. The woman, once underestimated, had astonished not just the audience but the famous pianist himself. She had shown that true talent is not always visible at first glance, that it can reside quietly, patiently, waiting for the right moment to shine. The pianist reflected on his own assumptions, understanding that humility and openness are as essential to growth as skill and practice. The evening had ended, but the lesson remained. True artistry, courage, and authenticity leave an indelible mark on the world and those fortunate enough to witness it.